Welcome, everyone. Today we are diving into the history of the Wadia Group, one of India's oldest family-run business empires spanning almost 300 years.
It's incredible how they've not just survived, but thrived through so many huge historical shifts. We're talking colonialism, independence revolutions in technology. It's a testament to adapting and evolving.
And for this deep dive, we'll be drawing from the Wadia legacy, a factual history of the Wadia Group. But we won't just be looking at dates and names. We really want to understand how this family navigated these massive changes over centuries. What choices did they make? What drove them?
It's like holding a mirror up to India's own transformation through the lens of this one family's business decisions.
Exactly. So let's go back to the 18th century Bombay picture, a bustling port city full of opportunity. The East India Company is growing in power, and the Parsee community, known for their business skills and craftsmanship, they're in a unique position.
The Parsees were outside the traditional caste system, often acting as a bridge between the British and local communities that gave them access and opportunities others didn't have.
And that's where our story begins, with Lovji Nusarwanji Wadia, a Parsee shipwright. Now, precise details from 1736 are a little scarce, but historical accounts consistently point to this year as the start of his partnership with the East India Company.
Can you imagine building a business that lasts for centuries, passed down through generations? What kind of vision and determination did Lovji have? It's remarkable.
It really makes you think about what kind of person he was, right? What were his goals, his dreams? Unfortunately, those specific details are lost to time. But what we do know is he laid the groundwork for something extraordinary. The Wadias went on to become the premier shipbuilders for the East India Company, even supplying ships to the British Royal Navy.
And we're not talking just any ships. These were impressive vessels, like the HMS Minden launched in 1810, built with sturdy Malabar teak, a symbol of the Wadia's craftsmanship and growing influence.
And wasn't the Minden involved in the War of 1812? The bombardment of Fort McHenry, the one that inspired the Star-Spangled Banner?
That's right, although that specific connection needs a bit more research. But the point is the Wadias weren't just building ships, they were building pieces of history, shaping global events. Other famous ships they built include the HMS Cornwallis, where the Treaty of Nanking was signed ending the First Opium War, and the HMS Asia flagship at the Battle of Navarino. These were powerful symbols of the time, and the Wadias were right at the heart of it.
Now fast forward to the mid-1800s, and the shipbuilding industry is going through a massive transformation. Wood to iron sail to steam. Many shipbuilders struggled to keep up clinging to the old ways. But not the Wadias.
This is a perfect example of their foresight. Instead of waiting for their core business to become obsolete, they started diversifying. It's classic business acumen. Recognizing the changing times and adapting accordingly. How many businesses even today fail to do this and ultimately pay the price?
It really makes you wonder, is adaptability a key ingredient in building a multi-generational legacy? I mean, to last for almost 300 years, you have to have something special, right?
Well, let's look at 1879 when Nusarwanji Wadia, one of the descendants, founds Bombay Dyeing. Think about the context. The American Civil War had just ended. The Suez Canal had opened up global trade routes, and India's own industrial scene was emerging. It was a time ripe with opportunity.
So once again, the Wadias found themselves at a pivotal point in history, and they didn't hesitate to seize the opportunity. They weren't afraid to jump into a whole new industry. Of course, they faced stiff competition, British imports, emerging Japanese manufacturers. It was a tough market to crack.
Absolutely. This wasn't just about making cloth. This was about establishing Indian industry on a global stage, a stage dominated by established players. This ambition, this drive to compete and excel, seems to be a recurring theme with the Wadias.
And they succeeded. By the turn of the century, Bombay Dyeing was a major player in the textile industry. But of course, the early 20th century was a turbulent time. A rising nationalist movement, 2 world wars, economic swings. It's hard to imagine how businesses survived at all.
This is where Sir Wadia takes the helm of Bombay Dyeing and steers it through these tumultuous times. He wasn't just a savvy businessman, he was also knighted for his philanthropy. His legacy includes the Bhai Wadia Hospital for Children in Mumbai, still operating today.
That's remarkable. It was fairly common back then for industrialists to be philanthropists. There was an expectation to give back to society. And for Parsees, social responsibility was deeply ingrained in their culture.
It's fascinating to see how personal values and community ethos intersected with business decisions back then. It wasn't just about profits, there was this sense of duty to the community. And maybe this reflected a savvy understanding of building goodwill in a changing social landscape.
Then 1947, India gains independence. A monumental shift. A whole new game with new rules. Nehru's policies aimed at development but also created a heavily regulated environment for businesses. And who steps up to navigate this new reality? Neville Wadia, Sir Ness's son.
And here's a fascinating personal detail. Neville's wife Dina was the daughter of Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founder of Pakistan. Talk about complex family dynamics amidst a historical event that literally divided a nation.
Wow, that is incredible.
Yeah.
Imagine your family being so closely intertwined with such a defining historical moment. It really highlights the human element behind these massive changes, even as nations divided, personal ties and probably struggles endured.
It definitely adds another layer to the Wadia story. It reminds us that history isn't just dates and events. It's about the lives and choices of people caught up in these currents of change.
And amidst all this, the Wadia tradition of philanthropy continued. They established the Sir Ness Wadia Foundation for Education, showing a continued commitment to something bigger than just their own business interests.
Precisely. It shows a long-term perspective, a belief in building something that would benefit not just themselves, but generations to come. And this leads us to what was arguably the most difficult time for Indian private businesses, the License Raj era from 1971 to 1991.
This was a time of strict government controls on almost everything, wasn't it? Imagine needing government permission for expanding production and importing materials. It must have been incredibly stifling for businesses.
It was the License Raj, aimed to promote self-sufficiency and protect domestic industries. But it also created a bureaucratic maze that hindered growth and innovation. It was a true test of survival for Indian businesses.
And this is where Nusli Wadia, Neville's son, takes center stage. He was known for his clashes with powerful figures like Reliance Industries, showing a willingness to fight for what he believed in. He had a real fighter spirit.
He was a force to be reckoned with. He not only navigated this web of regulations, but also made some strategic moves that would shape the future of the Wadia Group. One of those moves was acquiring Britannia Industries.
The biscuit company. That's a diversification move that really paid off.
It did. But acquiring a major company like Britannia during the License Raj was no easy feat. It required political maneuvering, strategic alliances, a deep understanding of the system.
It sounds like this period really tested Nusli's business skills and his ability to play the game, so to speak.
It did. And this was also when they leaned heavily into real estate. A shrewd move, considering how restricted manufacturing was at the time. It was about leveraging existing assets, finding opportunities within a very constrained system.
So essentially hedging their bets, ensuring steady income from real estate while navigating the choppy waters of manufacturing.
Exactly. It speaks to their ability to adapt and diversify, a recurring theme in the Wadia story.
And just when you think they've weathered the worst of it, 1991 hits, and India undergoes massive economic liberalization. A complete turnaround, opening the doors to foreign investment and encouraging private enterprise after decades of control. How did the Wadia Group respond to this sudden shift?
It was a time of immense opportunity, but also a lot of uncertainty. How would companies used to operating in a protected market fare in a newly liberalized environment? The Wadias, as always, adapted, Bombay dyeing, modernized, focusing on retail, and they even made a bold move into polyester production.
A move that, in hindsight, didn't quite pan out as planned right. It seems even the smartest business minds can't always predict the future perfectly.
That's true. And that's a good point for us to pause our deep dive for now. We've journeyed from the bustling docks of colonial Bombay to the dawn of a new economic era in India. We've seen how the Wadias built ships that shaped history, diversified into textiles, navigated political and economic storms, and always adapted to the changing tides.
It's been quite a journey, and we're just getting started. When we return, we'll delve into the later years of the Wadia Group, exploring their ventures into aviation, and their successes, and of course the challenges they faced. Stay with us as we continue to unravel this fascinating story of resilience and transformation.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Wadia Group. As we learned in the last part, this family has an incredible history of adapting to change. We left off with India's economic liberalization in 1991, a moment that would reshape the country's business landscape.
Yeah, it was like a whole new playing field for them. After decades of working within a protected market, they now had to compete globally. How did they handle such a big shift?
It was a period of intense change and uncertainty. For instance, Bombay Dyeing decided to really ramp up their modernization. They shifted focus to retail, recognizing the booming consumer market in India.
But didn't they also make a huge investment in polyester production around that time? What happened with that?
They did. It seemed like a smart move. Global demand for synthetic fibers was growing, and India wanted to reduce its dependence on imported polyester.
So it must have looked like a sure thing. But it didn't really work out, did it?
No, unfortunately not. By 2011, they had shut down their polyester manufacturing. It's a reminder that even with the best planning, sometimes things just don't work out.
It must have been a tough call to close down a major operation like that. What caused their polyester business to fail?
A few factors contributed. The global polyester market became incredibly competitive, with cheaper alternatives flooding in. Plus, the cost of raw materials, especially crude oil, which is used to make polyester, fluctuated a lot.
So a combination of external forces, things they couldn't really control. That makes sense.
Mm,
But it's interesting that even after this setback, the Wadias didn't give up. They changed direction again, didn't they?
exactly. They refocused on their core strengths, textiles, and real estate. It was a strategic move, a consolidation of resources, but also a smart one. They leveraged what they knew best to weather the storm.
It's interesting how real estate keeps coming up as a key element in their story. It's almost like a safety net, providing stability when other ventures face challenges.
It is, and it highlights their understanding of the Indian market. Specifically, their home base of Mumbai real estate was and still is a valuable asset in a rapidly growing city like Mumbai.
Let's shift gears and talk about Britannia, the biscuit company they acquired during the License Raj era. Under the Wadias, Britannia went from a household name to a real industry giant.
They did a phenomenal job with Britannia. They expanded beyond just biscuits into cakes, breads, dairy products. They understood that the Indian consumer was evolving, wanting better quality and healthier options. Britannia really tapped into that.
It sounds like they had this instinct for predicting consumer trends and adapting their products. They weren't just selling biscuits, they were selling a lifestyle.
You could say that. And their success with Britannia shows their business acumen, taking an established brand and making it even stronger, broadening its reach and appeal.
Okay, now for the part I've been really curious about, Go Air launching an airline in 2005, that's a whole new level of bold. What was the thinking there? Were they trying to become India's Richard Branson?
Well, India's aviation sector was booming in the early 2000s. With a rising middle class and increasing air travel, the potential was huge. It was a calculated risk, but one that seemed to fit with their history of expanding into new sectors.
A risk that sadly didn't pay off in the end. After rebranding as Go First in 2021, they filed for bankruptcy just 2 years later. What happened? Was it simply bad timing?
The aviation industry is notoriously tough. High operating costs, fierce competition, price wars. It's a constant struggle to stay afloat. And Go First faced all of these challenges.
Plus, the pandemic must have hit the entire aviation industry hard. Imagine the impact of travel restrictions and grounded flights on a new airline.
Absolutely. COVID-19 was definitely a factor, but Go First was already facing difficulties before the pandemic. They had operational issues, financial troubles, and fierce competition from established players in the Indian market.
So it was a combination of challenges that ultimately led to their downfall. It shows that even the most successful business families aren't immune to failure, especially in a volatile industry like aviation.
That's a key takeaway from this part of the Wadia story. No matter how successful you are or how long your legacy is, there will always be obstacles, setbacks, and unexpected events. It's how you respond to those challenges that truly define success.
This makes me wonder about the individuals behind these decisions. We've talked about Lavji Naraj, Sirnes Neville, and Newsley. What were they like as people? Were they purely driven by ambition, or were there other factors that shaped their choices?
It's a great question. Unfortunately, the historical account we're using mainly focuses on the business side. We get glimpses of their personalities, like Sirnes's philanthropy, which suggests a strong sense of social responsibility, or Newsley's clashes with other industrialists, which hint at a strong will and a willingness to stand up for what he believed in. But to really understand their motivations, their fears, their aspirations, we'd need more personal sources like letters or diaries.
It's too bad we don't have those more intimate perspectives.
Yeah.
It would be fascinating to know what really drove them, what kept them going through the good times and bad.
Absolutely. But even without those personal details, their actions tell us a lot. They were builders, innovators, risk-takers, deeply connected to the fate of India. Their story is a testament to the entrepreneurial spirit, the ability to adapt, and the belief in building something that will last.
So where does this leave the Wadia Group today? Are they still a major force?
Well, even with the setback of Go First, the Wadia Group is still very much active. Britannia continues to perform well, expanding its product line and reaching new markets. Bombay Dyeing has gone back to its roots in textiles and real estate, strategically using their assets in a constantly evolving market.
It seems like they've learned from their experiences, both the successes and the failures, and they're applying that knowledge to navigate the 21st century.
They are. They've shown time and again that they're not afraid to adapt, to reinvent themselves, and to tackle new challenges head on. And as we'll see in the final part of our deep dive, this resilience, this ability to learn and grow is perhaps the most important lesson we can learn from the Wadia story.
This has been incredibly insightful so far. Before we wrap up our deep dive, let's pause and consider the Wadia Group's legacy within the larger context of India's economic and social evolution. We'll be back soon to explore their impact, the challenges they still face, and the enduring lessons we can all learn from their remarkable journey. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on quite a journey tracing the incredible history of the Wadia Group. This is a family whose story is practically intertwined with the story of India itself.
It really is quite a story, right? From building ships for the East India Company to navigating the complexities of today's global economy, there's never a dull moment.
It's amazing to think about all the changes they've witnessed and adapted to over the centuries. As we wrap up this deep dive, what are some key takeaways? What can we learn from the Wadias in our own lives and careers?
Well, one of the most striking things about them is their resilience. They've faced so many challenges, economic downturns, political upheavals, technological disruptions, even a global pandemic, and yet they always persevered, adapted, and found new ways forward.
It's like they have this incredible ability to bounce back no matter what. Is there a secret to that resilience? Is it something you can learn, or is it just in their blood?
That's a great question. While some of it might be part of their family culture and values, I think a big part of it is their mindset. They don't dwell on setbacks. They see challenges as opportunities for growth and innovation.
So it's about having a positive outlook, being willing to learn from mistakes, and taking a proactive approach to problem solving. It's not about avoiding failure, but about knowing how to come out stronger on the other side.
Exactly. And speaking of navigating change, that's another key lesson from the Wadia story. They never held on too tightly to outdated methods or industries. They knew when to shift gears, even if it meant leaving behind something that had been successful in the past.
Their move from shipbuilding to textiles is a perfect example, and then branching out into biscuits and even aviation shows they weren't afraid to explore new territory. It takes guts to embrace change, especially when you're already established in a particular field.
It does. And it requires a willingness to constantly learn and adapt, to step outside your comfort zone and be open to new ideas and technologies.
And beyond resilience and adaptability, there's another thing that stands out about the Wadias: their commitment to a long-term vision. They weren't just focused on short-term gains. They built institutions, invested in education, and gave back to their community through philanthropy.
That really speaks to a sense of purpose that goes beyond simply building a business empire. They understood that true success is about creating something that lasts, something that benefits society as a whole.
It's about leaving a legacy not just for themselves, but for future generations. It makes you wonder if that sense of purpose is what fuels their resilience and adaptability. Maybe it's that deeper meaning that helps them through tough times.
That's an interesting thought, isn't it? Maybe having that long-term vision, that commitment to something bigger than themselves, is what allows them to overcome challenges and come out even stronger.
Their story is so closely connected to the story of India. They started as shipbuilders for a colonial power, then transitioned to industrialists in a newly independent nation, and eventually navigated the complexities of a globalized world. They've seen it all.
It really does make you think, if the Wadia Group's history mirrors India's own journey, what can we learn from that about facing the future?
That's a great question to leave our listeners with. What choices will we make individually and collectively that will shape the course of history? How will we adapt to a world that's changing faster than ever?
By looking at the Wadias, by studying their choices and how they responded to challenges, maybe we can gain some insights into how to navigate the complexities of our own time. It's a story that offers valuable lessons in resilience, adaptability, and the importance of having a vision that extends beyond our immediate circumstances.
On that note, we come to the end of our deep dive into the fascinating world of the Wadia Group. It's been a journey full of twists and turns, moments of both triumph and setbacks, and most importantly, valuable lessons that we can all apply to our own lives.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those thought-provoking questions.
And who knows, maybe someday your own story will be worthy of a deep dive.